Hi guys, I'm Shirwan and you're watching Caspian Report. A few days ago it was the 18th Remembrance Day of Khojaly, and while I was reading the Armenian news headlines, I noticed a lot of hateful sentiment. In general, there was a anti-Azerbaijan attitude. Some viewers might not know what Khojaly refers to, so I will first explain this. Khojaly was a town in Azerbaijan as part of the Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Oblast. It had a population of some 7,000 people. In the early 90s, the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan escalated into a full-scale war. And in 1992, in the night of 25th February to 26th February, the city of Khojaly was attacked and bombarded by heavy artillery. When the small group of defenders were finally taken down, the Russian tanks and armored vehicles moved into the town, followed by Armenian troops. The civilian population fled by foot through an humanitarian corridor, where they were later on ambushed and brutally massacred. In just a few hours, hundreds and hundreds of civilians were killed. The attack was carried out by the Armenian forces with the assistance of Russian 366 Regiment. In a research by the UN Human Rights Watch, 613 dead civilians were identified, but the total number of dead is well above several thousand. Video and photographic evidence of the mass murder was captured by Azerbaijani journalist Chingiz Mustafayev. Later on, the radio message of the Armenian units preparing for the massacre was also intercepted. I added links to both these materials in the description. But, these are just facts, and sometimes even facts can be misleading because we only see the numbers and fail to visualize the reality and the brutality of the massacre. An American quote describes the following. Quote, Armenian Armed Forces, backed by the subunits of the CIS Army, Infantry Guards Regiment 366, destroyed the Azerbaijan town of Khojaly. The residents of the town were being run down by motorized infantry vehicles and armored personnel carriers. Old-age people, women, and children were being fired point blank. The injured were scalped. Their toenails were pulled out. Armenians were piercing dead bodies' eyes. They were cutting off their ears. These poor people were guilty of only one thing. They were Azerbaijanis. Unquote. This quote gives a short but accurate description of the brutality of Khojaly massacre. Besides the brutality, we also have to understand the motive for the massacre. Most Armenian websites are in full denial of any Armenian involvement and simply say nothing happened at all. Other Armenian websites put the blame on the Azerbaijani government and turn Khojaly into some sort of a conspiracy. However, any rational person understands that these websites are only meant for nationalists. And it's often very hard to reason with nationalists, and this certainly applies to Armenian nationalists, also known as Dashnaks, who actually use these conspiracies as arguments to deny Khojaly and the Armenian involvement. But at the same time, some Armenian nationalistic sources admitted the guilt of the Armenian side. According to Makar Melkonyan, the brother of Armenian military leader Monte Melkonyan, he said that Khojaly had been a strategic goal, but it had also been an act of revenge. Now think about this. The date of the massacre in Khojaly had a special significance. It was the run-up to the 4th anniversary of the Sumgait riots, in which 32 people were killed. Amongst the dead were 26 Armenians and 6 Azerbaijanis. Melkonyan particularly mentions the role of 2 Armenian military detachments called Arabo and Aramo, of which most were Armenians from Arabic countries such as Lebanon and Syria. The Arabo and Aramo detachments had a reputation to stab to death many Azerbaijani civilians. Thomas de Waal interviewed the defense minister of Armenia, Serge Sarkisyan, who said the following about Khojaly, quote, "Before Khojaly, the Azerbaijanis thought that they were joking with us. They thought that the Armenians were a people who could not raise their hands against the civilian population. We were able to break that stereotype, and that's what happened." Unquote. In 2008, Serge Sarkisyan assumed the office of presidency in Armenia. So we have here the representative of a nation, the leader, the president of Armenia, who not only admits Khojaly massacre but even takes a certain degree of pride in it. After all, he was one of the commanders involved in the mass murder. The list of participants in the Khojaly bloodbath is 38 people. They are all wanted by Interpol. The list mostly includes ethnic Armenians, but also several Russians and servicemen of the 366th Infantry Regiment. In the description, I added the link to the list, which includes the names and their positions. As I said, the list includes 38 people, and there is a danger that this list can become even longer, with possible new massacres in the future. This is especially alarming when you take into consideration the increasing number of ultranationalists and fascists among the younger generation in Armenia. So it's of great importance that the Armenian generation, the younger Armenian generation, does not fall into the nationalist trap. I will leave you with one last quote by Armenian expert and chairman of the Caucasus Center for Peacekeeping Initiatives, Georgi Vanyan, who said, quote, "Khojaly could be the threshold of humanitarian catastrophe, the line near which a person was supposed to stop. We crossed this threshold, and to this day we avoid thinking that it's time to stop. Khojaly is a shame and a scourge for everyone, let it be Armenian or Azerbaijani. I bow to the victims of Khojaly, before their relatives and all who lived through the pain of loss with a sense of shame and helplessness." Unquote. It certainly takes courage to be honest and admit guilt. When asked whether Armenia will plead guilty for Khojaly, Vanyan replied, I quote, "Do you really think it is appropriate to demand Yerevan to plead guilty? Do you think we can seriously talk about any confessions or truths at the current circumstances?" Unquote. Based on this, we can assume that Armenia will continue to deny Khojaly to its fullest. And unfortunately, the Armenian youth will continue to be transferred into ultranationalists. However, I would love to be proven wrong and see an Armenian user apologize for Khojaly. Who knows, it could very well be a start. You can submit them in the comments below. This was a Caspian report by me, Shirvan. Thanks for your time, and Sağ ol.